If energy is everything, what makes it valuable? Opportunity cost, the margin where energy becomes value. As I wrote in The Nature of My Reality, energy, power, and motion intertwine within the realm of creation. The same process that transforms effort into value is the one that animates consciousness itself, a continuous act of weighing options and arriving at a choice. Every thought, instinct, emotion, and consideration forms a current of movement within consciousness, an energetic economy of decision making. What is praxeology? The study of intentional human behavior. It recognizes that our choices aren't arbitrary but purposeful, driven by subjective needs, all within the context of scarce resources. Energy then is not only physical or electrical, it is psychic, emotional, moral, the power to direct one's own motion. The quality of the intention determines the quality of the energy. Because if energy is everything, it must be understood as something that, if I care how it is produced, transformed, or converted, I am going to take one specific part of that energy that is intention, and I'm going to make it valuable. Because if I just focus on a partial part of that energy that is transformed into effort and it is transformed into decision making, that energy is very potent. What is opportunity cost? To make a choice means to give up another. Every act takes place at the margin, in the present, where I decide to invest my time, my attention, my energy. The margin is the precise moment of transformation, where value is created because one possibility is chosen over another. Every decision implies an unseen field of alternatives, and what I do not choose remains as potential energy unmanifested. Each choice is therefore a concentration of energy. I am always allocating, always directing, always investing my awareness. The cost of any choice lies in the possibilities it excludes, beyond the time or resources it consumes. The margin reveals the law of creation itself. Energy derives its value through clarity, purposeful application, and the awareness of scarcity. Astrology reflects the same principle, where energy moves through archetypal systems of exchange and value. Energy is the currency of decision. Time becomes value through attention as energy becomes value through intention. Every act carries a cost because it concentrates what I'm willing to give myself to. We can see this in an astrological trinity where sign, ruler, and house form one unified archetype, expressing past, present, and future as a single movement of consciousness. Each archetype contains its own memory, its own timing, its own direction, grounding the experience of reality within the third dimension. The archetype of initiation individuality ignites life into motion. The one that fuels and values sustains what is needed. The one that instigates and connects opens communication and circulation. The one that embraces and feels safe roots belonging and emotional memory. The one that validates and brings light expresses the will to create and to be seen. The one that refines, discerns, and edits keeps what serves and releases what does not. The one that relates to all things brings balance, resonance, and shared value. The one of metamorphosis confronts and transforms, teaching death and regeneration. The one that seeks truth and expands horizons gives faith to evolution itself. The one that defines and gives direction establishes order, structure, and integrity. The one that liberates and innovates reveals what is beyond conditioning. And the one that dissolves and brings back to source completes the cycle of return. These are 12 expressions of the same field, 12 frequencies of energy moving through different phases of becoming. Each archetype reveals how energy is exchanged, released, and reabsorbed within the wholeness of consciousness. Consciousness itself expands beyond the visible dimensions. Yet, what matters is how we apply that awareness in the present. Every decision is a concentration of energy, a lived expression of intention. Energy is the field of creation and the proof of value, acting as the invisible accounting of our choices, the way we measure what matters, but what we give ourselves to. At every margin, we decide, and in that decision, we define worth. If energy is everything, its value depends on the awareness we bring to it. Energy becomes value through intention, just as time becomes value through attention. Every act, every thought, every motion of will carries an opportunity cost, the unseen alternative we release in order to create what is chosen. To live with awareness of that exchange is to live as creator within the field of energy itself. Ta-da! Full moon in Taurus. The sun conjuncts my moon, Neptune, MC. I'm confronting old patterns of codependency as frequencies that no longer match my vibration. These were stubborn obsessions once. So the question becomes, do I want to hold on to an addiction or a relationship that is no longer flowing? Hmm. The relationship itself is a wavelength, and I can recognize when I'm no longer connected to it. This is another way of confronting fear through frequency. I'm tuning into a different vibration, and that's why the resonance shifts. The results are no longer about the person, situation, or thing, but about how I attune to them. When I feel that something causes pain or distortion, I become aware of the dissonance. And through deep breathing, and acknowledgement, I realized that I can tune into a different state of mind. In doing so, I integrate it with clarity, seeing it for what it is, a sign to tune into another octave of resonance. As the current one stagnates, the result naturally flows. All this is very evident now that the south node of the moon is in Virgo, and it is transiting my eighth house, approaching my natal Pluto. I see this as an opportunity to refine the way I relate in the most raw and honest way through my own psychology. When connection reaches that depth, it can easily turn into obsession. It becomes a thing. But I no longer want to relate through obsession. I want to move in and out of the connection as naturally as the waves of the ocean, allowing intensity to rise and recede without losing myself in its tide. This Scorpio season is always generous in giving me insights. The sun is now transiting near my moon in the ninth house. And as I write this, the moon in Pisces is conjunct my Chiron and the north node in my second house. There is a breakthrough. I just had a moment of clarity through all these weeks where, through alignment and deep breathing techniques, I became aware of this. So I'm grateful for that. Scorpio is all about metamorphosis. The full moon is coming this week, and it will be in Taurus. Taurus is all about needs and values. Full moon will happen on Tuesday, November the 5th. It anchors everything that Scorpio season has excavated. The polarity between Taurus and Scorpio always asks how we hold value while releasing control, how we embody stability without resisting change. The moon in Taurus reflects what endures. The sun in Scorpio reveals what must transform. Together they create the balance between form and essence, possession and surrender. Venus now forms a finger of God at 28 degrees of Libra with Neptune and Uranus, marking the third stance to take this role after Mars around the eclipse on September 21st and the new moon in Libra on October 21st. This alignment feels like the closing of a cycle where harmony and clarity of values determine what to keep and what to release. This yacht signals divine recalibration. Venus carries the tone of essential needs and relational values, and deep listening to self and the other to carry leverage, while Uranus calls for liberation from old attachments and Neptune dissolves illusion. As the focal point, Venus refines how we experience resources, money, talent, and relationships to the other people, situations, and things, inviting us to align without expectation, control, or attachment. A refinement that shifts attention from what we want to how we vibrate. The year 2025 has been an extraordinary year for working on values, especially as it has been activating my second house directly. Mars has just entered Sagittarius, expanding the theme into action. Evolutionarily, this is the call to act from vision rather than reaction, to channel through meaningful fire. Mars here is exploring higher purpose, leaving the survival mode behind in Scorpio, learning to aim energy towards trust and empirical discovery. Supported by its trine to Saturn and Neptune, Mars grounds inspiration into form and turns ideas into lived experience, while its sextile to Pluto makes this time for empowered, conscious will, energy that moves through integrity rather than control. When Mars opposes Uranus, the old impulsive habits break apart, releasing the need to define freedom through rebellion. True liberation comes from alignment. With Jupiter in Cancer trining this Mars, there's a generosity in the process of confidence that expansion deepens it. Basically, there is zero resistance threatening security. The moon in Taurus brings us back to values, needs, and what it is essential in our lives. Are you still getting rid of what no longer aligns with your frequency? Last week, I released even more clothes, more objects, and all stagnated perspectives, and I feel lighter. This is what Taurus reminds us of: simplicity, value, and grounding after transformation. Altogether, this full moon and these transits form a frequency of recalibration. Venus finds harmony, Mars expands truth, Uranus liberates all ideas, Neptune attunes to imaginary beautiful outcomes, and Pluto transforms your stake in society. The Taurus Scorpio polarity signals that evolution is renewal. The energy we release through awareness returns purified. This is the evolutionary message of early November. Value is frequency. Real power is presence. Real creation begins once we no longer hold the old vibration. Ta-da! I recently listened to Michael Phillip and Danny Goller, The Hidden Code Behind Consciousness and the Simulation. And it brought me to some conclusions at the end of the following quote that is part of the podcast. Opening quote. You know, your own, what you conceive as yourself, you can start to have this almost messiah like complex thinking, oh, I'm special now. I found this special thing and these fucking normie idiots don't get it. All these things, acknowledge them, and yet I do think it is directionally quite possible. Quite possible. Well, no, it's exactly what's happening. Only the thing that you mentioned with this messiah complex is actually very clear to me what's happening there. So basically, this is something I spoke with Gallimore when we sat down in LA. And so the way I see it is that every new reality that is created, it has the ultimate word, the ultimate instantation of the truth reverberating. Everything that is already known, reverberating in the fabric of that existence itself. In our case, space time. So this is, and beings are evolving alongside of it and towards it. And the second they reach the level where they start matching what the knowledge is, they do not get to add to it. Yes, but not until that moment. So when you, by the fact that you are acquire certain level of evolution intellectually, spiritually, it doesn't matter in what way, you start matching the angle and the intensity of what is already known by creation. But not everything is known. The reason everything is happening is because there is one thing that is not known by anyone in existence, which is why everything exists. And what is happening is that all of these realities are run in order to try and answer that question. So basically, when you started reaching this level of awareness of what in fact is going on, and then you're all of a sudden, by the fact that you can do these things, you're acquiring tools that gives you the ability to now add to the grid. Now, the grid is going to learn something through you, from you, that it didn't know before. And when that started happening, you start noticing the pre recorded messages of urgency, transcendence, all of these notes, that if you take them to mean stuff about you personally, you now start suffering from an anxiety complex. So basically, it's like Princess Leia comes in a pre recorded message. But in this case, she's talking just generally to whoever finds the message. And existence does that. But if you take it to mean you, so like you are in the presence of it, so you're like, oh, me, that's exactly what happens. And that's how people basically devolve into that. But if you understand that the message is available for everyone, you literally just need to notice it. Then you realize it's not about you personally, it's about we are doing this whole thing together, joined. That's basically what the confusion I think is happening there. Yeah, something you said there really resonated with me because there's this concept that's a huge mind fuck that I was trying to process at some point reading one of the Platonic thinkers. I don't remember if it was Plotinus. or who it was, but it was a bit more down the rabbit hole. And it was along those lines of that highest level of knowing, this noesis frame of mind that's so hard to communicate what exactly they mean by this. But it is a knowing and being at the same time. And that really felt like what you're describing. It's like you reach these states of consciousness where it's not just like knowledge, it's like you are. I don't want to say vibrating at the level because it sounds so cliche and so new age. And I don't want to align myself with that, with vibrations necessarily, but kind of like that. It's like there's literally a part of your psyche or soul that is like resonating with different plane, which is also a plane of mental, right? It's a plane of mental reality, particularly in idealistic context. This makes sense that if reality is essentially like layers of mental realities that eventually culminate in one ultimate layer, or you could use it as one most basic layer of reality. I think it will make sense that you are also somehow being at that level and thinking at that level at the same time. And that's something that's really hard to wrap your mind around from this point of view, like consensus reality point of view. Yet when you're doing it, I think it does make sense. I actually think it's a lot less of a mystery if we really pay attention, because I don't think it's ever not that. It's just that we don't notice that it's that. I would agree. Yeah. And you're right. It is to some degree a problem with the way that we learn how to think about the world in the modern world, in which the academic way of seeing it is a kind of a king, right? But I would say that even intellectuals, the way I define it in terms are really important here. The way I define knowing or understanding is a state of being. Now, you might think of it in terms of like, well, what do you mean? I calculated this thing and then I understood it. Why you don't notice is that when you occupy the state of actual understanding, like deep understanding of something, let's say even in mathematics, something very technical, there's deep catharsis there. It's very much in your body. You just don't notice it. But the fact that it feels good, it tells you that it is instantiated as a state in the body, which entails the ability to see clearly even the technical stuff. So when you truly understand something, you don't need to ask things about it or analyze it in roundabouts. You don't need to say things about it. You just see it from what it is. And you can understand it from a very holistic perspective. You can turn it in your head. You can understand the logic of its operations. All of that is what I call knowing. That's actually understanding of something, right? And there's no need to mince words. As long as we understand what we are trying to say, that's all that matters. You can swap the words. You can say, some people like to call it comprehension, some like to call it knowing. That's fine, but it's not like the word is the thing, right? We're just trying to point to something. What I'm pointing to is the state of full embodiment of what the other thing is. That's what I call understanding. And it is a way, a state of being. So when you go up the levels, it's just more of that that you can occupy within your state of awareness, including in your own body, of course. Otherwise, the knowledge is not actually instantiated fully until you feel it. This is a long quote from The Hidden Code Behind Consciousness and Simulation. It is around the minute 55 until the minute 103. I leave the link in below this. So this is my take comparing it to dimensional awareness. Danny Goller's description of realities that are created and a grid that learns through you parallels Barbara Hahn Clow's dimensional cosmology in The Alchemy of Nine Dimensions. His ultimate word reverberating through the fabric of existence echoes her view that each dimension carries a harmonic memory of all others. When he names one thing not known by anyone in existence as the reason everything unfolds, he's voicing her ninth dimensional premise. The universe evolves through its own ongoing discovery. The Messiah complex distortion he identifies corresponds to her warning about fourth dimensional inflation, when collective signals are misread as personal revelation. His insistence that true understanding is a state of being instantiated in the body aligns with her fifth dimensional embodiment of knowing. Both describe consciousness as a living architecture in which awareness refines itself by resonating through multiple layers of reality. So, dear reader, I leave you with something to ponder. What state of being are you tuning into? What level of awareness shows you the way out of the simulation and directs your soul toward the evolution that you sign up for? Have a great week.